Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. It's been a few months since I've talked about that truly deplorable movie, Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction. But a very interesting article was published by Forbes on March 31st that shed some light on how much Disney lost on that massive flop, as well as the movie's actual production budget. But before proceeding, I'd like to ask everyone to please like this video, please subscribe to this channel, and please press the bell to receive notifications. Thanks! Now, for those of you who watched any of my Who Will Be the Biggest Flop videos that I produced in 2023, you'll undoubtedly remember just how bad the box office was for Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction. And on the same day in May of 2023 that the movie premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in France, as Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy and Disney CEO Bob Iger were entering into the theater, Disney announced the permanent closure of her overpriced Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser hotel. And critics weren't all that happy about the movie either, as I had talked about in two back-to-back videos that I had released at the time. Right! Then, on the day that the movie premiered, June 30th, 2023, I released a video in which I shared my first projections for the movie's final global gross box office revenue. And that range was from $368 million to $440 million. Then when I did my first set of revised projections for the movie's final global gross box office that were based on the movie's opening weekend box office earnings, in a video that I had released a few days later on July 3rd, 2023, those revised projections were between $342 million to $409 million, which was a lower overall projection due in part to the movie's opening weekend box office being worse than expected. And what was the final global gross box office that Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction actually earned? Just under $384 million, which was well within both my original and my first revised projections for the movie. In fact, it was only $8.5 million away from the $375.5 million midpoint of my first revised projected range for the movie. So I think that my early projections for the movie's final global gross box office were rather spot on. Now, to estimate the movie's break-even point, I had used a reported production budget of $294.7 million, which I had then multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, as well as the additional costs of marketing the movie and other miscellaneous costs that the studio pays above and beyond the production budget, which then yielded an estimated break-even point range of $736.8 million to $884.1 million. And when I subtracted the movie's $384 million in global gross box office revenue from that estimated break-even point range, I got a range of losses from $354.1 million to $501.4 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when I then divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters kept for themselves, I got a range of losses for Disney and Lucasfilm from $177 million to $250.7 million. And to be clear, that range of estimated losses not only took the production budget for Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction into account, but also an approximate range for its marketing budget and other miscellaneous costs, because those have to be taken into account as part of the movie's actual break-even point. And I wanted to be very clear about that as I show the title for the Forbes article. Indiana Jones whips up $130 million loss for Disney. Now, the reason that the article is claiming a much lower loss than I am is explained deep within the article. The financial statements released yesterday, which was March 30th, reflect the bulk of these costs, and it means production costs, as they were for the year to April 1st, 2023, which was 3 months before the movie was released. And then I'll skip to the beginning of the next paragraph. The financial statements do not show the marketing costs for the movie. In other words, Disney released a financial statement on March 30th that only shows how much the company lost based on the movie's production budget alone, and does not include the additional costs for marketing as my estimated range of losses does. So did Disney lie? I'll leave that up to you to decide, but let's go back to the article from its beginning. Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction failed to cover its costs at the box office according to financial statements released on Friday, March 30th, which show that Disney spent $134.2 million more on making the movie than it is understood to have received in ticket sales. The movie starred Mads Mikkelsen, Antonio Banderas, and Harrison Ford as the eponymous adventurer who comes out of retirement to track down an ancient time-traveling artifact before it falls into the hands of the bad guys from 1940s Germany. The film, which was released in June last year, is famous for its dramatic train chase featuring a digitally de-aged Ford. It came at a cost, as the filings reveal that $79 million was spent on post-production work in the year to the start of April 2023, bringing the movie's total budget to an eye-watering $387.2 million. But it didn't translate into fortune and glory for the film. No, it sure as hell didn't. Now, that $387.2 million spent to produce the movie is the movie's actual production budget. But as the article soon points out, Disney got a rebate from the British government, which is why they filmed it there. And it's why a lot of other movies get filmed in the UK today. Despite its blockbuster budget, the movie was castigated by critics. It has a 70% score on review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, though moviegoers weren't so scathing. They gave it an audience rating of 88%, but not enough of them streamed through the turnstiles to cover its production costs. Now, if you go and look at the Metacritic website, you'll quickly see that the movie earned a 58% Metascore, which is the critic score, and a user score of 4.5 out of 10. So yes, this movie was rejected by both critics and viewers alike. Data from industry analyst Box Office Mojo shows that Dildo of Destruction grossed $384 million, just 49% of the takings of its prequel, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The 2008 movie was the fourth film in the Indiana Jones franchise and also attracted fierce criticism, which makes the performance for Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction all the more dismal. Dismal really is the perfect word to use in reference to Disney and Lucasfilm. Although its box office is in a similar ballpark to the receipts of the first three Indiana Jones movies, they were all released in the 1980s and far eclipsed Dildo of Destruction's tally when adjusted for inflation. Studios receive around half of theater takings, giving Disney an estimated $192 million from Dildo of Destruction. Calculating whether this covered its production costs requires knowing how much Disney spent on the movie, which would usually be a closely guarded secret. This is because studios' financial statements typically combine the costs of all of their movies without itemizing how much was spent on each one. But movies filmed in the United Kingdom are an exception. Studios put up with higher levels of disclosure when they film there in order to benefit from the UK government's Audiovisual Expenditure Credit Scheme. This gives studios a cash reimbursement of up to 25.5% of the money they spent in the UK, provided that it represents at least 10% of the film's total costs. At the start of this year, the UK government slightly raised the reimbursement ceiling from 25% in the face of competition from other countries which are offering similar schemes. In order to prove to the government that they meet the criteria, studios set up separate UK corporations to make each film. They usually have code names so that they don't raise attention with fans when filing for permits to film off-site. And I don't think that anyone should be surprised by that. The corporations are a goldmine of information as they have to file financial statements showing everything from staff numbers, salaries, and costs to the cash reimbursements that they receive. Although Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction is largely set in the United States, it was made at Pinewood Studios outside of London and on location in Europe and North Africa. The Disney subsidiary behind Dildo of Destruction was PLT Productions UK, which is named after the Phoenix Little Theatre. Why? That's where Steven Spielberg's first movie, Firelight, premiered in 1964, and he directed the first 4 Indiana Jones movies, which were obviously all better than Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction, including Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The financial statements shine a spotlight on the reimbursement from the UK government, as well as the precise cost of the movie. In February of last year, Forbes revealed that PLT's financial statements for the period up to April 1st, 2022 showed that it had been reimbursed $58.3 million. It was the magic touch that the company needed, as it had already spent a staggering $308.2 million on the movie. Filming wrapped in late February 2022, so the financial statements only showed around a month of spending on post-production, which was highly cost-intensive due to the digital de-aging of a then 78-year-old Ford by Disney's Industrial Light and Magic VFX division. So here's the line that I read earlier in the video. The financial statements released on March 30th reflect the bulk of these costs, as they are for the year to April 1st, 2023, which was 3 months before the movie was released. During that period, PLT was reimbursed a further $2.7 million, which brought its net spending down to $326.2 million when combined with the $58.3 million it had already received. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the actual production budget for Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction, $326.2 million. Deducting this from Disney's $192 million share of the box office gives the loss of $134.2 million, but that isn't the end of the story. The financial statements do not show the marketing costs for the movie. Okay, now that we know that the actual production budget for Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction was $326.2 million, I can recalculate my own estimated range of losses for the movie. When I multiply that more accurate $326.2 million production budget by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, that gives me an estimated break-even point range of $815.5 million to $978.6 million. And when I subtract the movie's $384 million in global gross box office revenue from that range, I get a range of $432.8 million to $595.9 million in global gross box office losses. And when I divide that range by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, I get an estimated range of losses for Disney and Lucasfilm of $216.4 million to $298 million, which is a lot closer to the estimated range of losses for The Flash and The Marvels that I used for my 2023 Who Will Be the Biggest Flop video series. Thus, Disney and Lucasfilm lost $134.2 million on the production of Indiana Jones and the Dildo of Destruction, as well as the additional losses of $82.2 million to $163.8 million in losses for marketing and other miscellaneous costs. Disney, like other Hollywood studios, tried very hard to conceal their actual losses, and Disney was even more desperate to do that while the proxy battle with Nelson Peltz was going on. And since Bob Iger and Disney's existing board of directors won the proxy fight, I can only assume that shareholders are only interested in losing more money. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.